it's beautiful that we have these three incredible artists that are here to come and talk and have a great conversation, and you'll stop hearing from me pretty soon. But I just wanted to introduce the three people and have them come up and engage in their discussion, so then we could open it up to you guys. And Rita Indiana was kind enough to come and talk with Nelson and Victoria. Rita Indiana is an incredible writer, incredible musician, someone who teaches here at NYU, and just one of those kind of North Stars within Dominican culture, but also just even within Caribbean culture as well, and even in the urban space of here in New York, just someone that we really respect, and that at least knowing someone within the Dominican diaspora, Caribbean diaspora, someone that you look at who makes art and writes in the way that she does and makes the music she makes, that you're just like, wow, it really is possible to find an authentic way to express yourself, and to express where you come from and to grapple with those things. So I'm grateful that Rita is able to come and lead this. And to have both Nelson and Victoria, two filmmakers whose work I've deeply admired as a filmmaker myself, and the last 2 days have been incredible. Last 3 days we saw Victoria's film RAMONA on Tuesday, and she was able to have a master class with us, and then we were able to see Nelson's film Cocote today and have him talk on behalf of his work and in advance, and or shortly after having won the Silver Bear at Berlin, which is a great honor for him and also for the culture in general. First Caribbean filmmaker to win that award since 1994 when Titon won it for Latin America. Okay, Latin America on the whole. Okay, wow. Since Titon won it in '94, so that's incredible. That's incredible for Fresa y Chocolate, which was a great film as well. But PEPE is something that I hope we all can watch, because it is truly a masterpiece and something that we should all be proud of. So Victoria's film RAMONA also screened at Berlinale last year, and is an incredible work of art, and also her debut feature Lo que se hereda before that screened at True False. And I'm just really excited to have these three artists come up and have a great conversation. So please, without further ado, let me welcome Rita Indiana, Nelson Carlo de los Santos Arias, and Victoria Linares.
Hola. Has everyone here seen the films?
Yeah.
Who hasn't seen the film? Okay. Since we're engaging in this conversation in the language of empire, I have brought some notes. Okay. I'm really happy to be here. Welcome everyone. I'd like to thank NYU and City College for organizing the series of events and for inviting me to be here to speak to two of the most interesting filmmakers in Latin America today, who also happen to be Dominican, Victoria Linares and Nelson Carlo de los Santos Arias. I hope everyone here had the chance to attend the screenings of the films showcased Tuesday and today. But for those of you who haven't, I saw a couple hands being raised. I'm going to read a little bit about both films, okay? So we can understand the conversation a little better. Here we go. So in RAMONA, feeling unprepared for her upcoming role as a 15-year-old pregnant girl from the outskirts of Santo Domingo, an actor from a more affluent background, Camila, decides to sit down with pregnant young girls for inspiration. Yet in the process, as the sorority of 15 teens candidly recount their realities on camera, little by little they unexpectedly influence the film's production, taking it into uncharted territory. Initially presenting itself as a behind-the-scenes making of RAMONA, quickly becomes a hazy postmodernist mix of telenovela pastiche, observational documentary, film rehearsals, cinema verite, and theater that constantly plays with the boundaries between fiction and nonfiction, reality and artifice. In Cocote is a rapture crime fable set in the Dominican Republic. Nelson Carlo de los Santos Arias Cocote follows Alberto, a kind-hearted gardener, returning home to attend his father's funeral. When he discovers that a powerful local figure is responsible for his father's death, Alberto realizes that he's summoned by his family to avenge the murder. It's an unthinkable act, especially for him, an evangelical Christian. But as pressure mounts, he sees few ways out. Questions of faith, tradition, and honor course through this electrifying film, which seemingly at the speed of thought itself, jumps between film formats, colors, and aspect ratios, radically envision a community turned asunder by senseless violence. Both these films belong to a new wave of Dominican film, a super young and thriving industry that is evolving artistically at high speed. I'd like to share a fact that some of you may not know. When I was growing up as a teenager in the 90s, there were only 3, maybe 4 films that we could call Dominican made, okay? Now we're having 20 films, Dominican films in some years, done in 1 year in the Dominican Republic. So this is, this fact, the fact that incredibly sophisticated films such as these are being made and are being awarded amazes me, and I think speaks of our ability to create, to teach ourselves, to absorb, and to compete. So I would like to ask, I'm gonna ask a couple questions for you both, okay, first, and then I'll ask individual questions. I would like to know what works of art, people, events, spaces, influenced your work, and how and when did you decide that you wanted to be filmmakers?
That's really nice. Yeah, you're closer.
That's hard and easy at the same time because I wanted to be a writer because my grandfather was a poet, and that was the only thing that I wanted to do. Like I wanted to write novels, and then when I came out of the closet, I was like heavily, how do you say, like como encerrada, like
Enclosed in?
Yeah, like my mom was like, you're never going out ever again. So my only method of, let's say like catharsis was like watching TV. And I started watching films, and then one in particular kind of like, you know, like sort of touched me, and it was Donnie Darko. And it touched me because I was like, what the hell is this? I don't get it. And I used to like watch it every time and never gotten around to understanding the narrative. And then obviously that's one part. And then when I saw 2 or 3 things I know about her from Godard, I was like, okay, I understand now. This is what I want to be doing right now. So I believe that's that. I believe that maybe Godard and Agnes Varda were the ones that actually guided me into this journey.
Okay.
Thank you for. Well, I mean, I'm a little bit more. I'm more boring in the sense that I always wanted. I always knew since I was a kid that I fell in love with cinema very young. I was the doctor says that you never stop being asthmatic, so I'm still, I guess, but when I was a kid, I had a lot of asthma, no? So I saw a lot of films, and of course, I mean, I was coming from a very tiny group of people, the son of a tiny group of people, very lefty, no? So my parents, I grew up in a very, I was growing up in Dominican Republic, but also with a continental consciousness of what is supposed to be Latin America. From my parents, from the school that I went to the only school that was actually made by women from el MPD, del Movimiento Popular Dominicano. It was Escuela Nueva. So,
el Movimiento Popular Dominicano is?
Yes,
tell us.
yes,
tell them.
yeah. It was a communist, a lefty party from the 70s, and this group of academics, they built this. So I was always very involved with theater, with music. My parents were melómanos, no? I read a lot of literature. So in the beginning, so I wanted to be first a musician, and then I wanted to be a writer, and but then I knew that in cinema I could do all. So from very very beginning, I wanted to make films. Rita, I read your books when I was very very young, and actually your generation, it was very important to me as a local reference. I was always trying to get. I was, since I was very young, of course, from my parents, I was not trying to consume things only from the United States. So I was always searching for, and of course, like the Caribbean, great lands of poets. So I was reading their poetries. I was listening to music of the Caribbean. And of course, and my first film that I fell in love with, Cría Cuervos from Carlos Saura. And I fell in love with this girl, Ana Torren, when I was 8. I felt that I was kind of her at the same. So in this loneliness of this character, I felt myself in this loneliness as an asthmatic kid. So this was I fell in love in cinema with this loneliness.
Thank you. So both Cocote and Ramona are, like I said, very sophisticated hybrid projects. And I'd like to ask you both, what detonated the creative process for these projects, and why choose these unconventional storytelling modes for them?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's true. Democratic. Okay. Okay, so I left the country when I was 20 years old. So I'm a diaspora, but a lonely diaspora, because I've been like a nomad. I never lived in a place where there's a lot of Dominicans, so I've been living half of my life outside of Dominican Republic, but in places where I couldn't find a lot of other Dominicans. So I've been like kind of so I guess like I started to engage my singularity after, I guess, seeing Cinema Novo, Glauber Rocha, Nelson Pereira dos Santos, and all these films that started to work in this realm of from a decolonial perspective. So post-colonial theory and decolonial theory, as the school of thought in Latin America, which has become very important since I was very young. So I started to understand that there was, in the academia, there was like this, there was this department that was like understanding post-colonial and decolonial as a process, but never post-occupied countries from the United States. So, which at a certain type is where, after the occupation of a lot of the occupation of the U.S. Army in our lands, in the whole Latin America, it was the revindication of their hegemonic power and the process of the Americanization, as we are all Americanized. I mean, whether we like it or not, we are. Cocote actually was a result of a reflection that I had, that when I said, you know, it's time for me to go back to the Dominican Republic and have a conversation as an artist, right? So I said that just right after. So sorry, I will repeat it. I learned in the Western university. So when we want to know something, we go to books. We go to the production of social sciences through sociology, anthropology, ethnography. And then I come from a country that there is not a massive production of social sciences books. So for me, it become very complex. How do I, because what I learned, I mean, this was the tool that I had, and I don't have it here. So I enter this society, very conservative society, in all levels, in all professions. And of course, religion and the confirmation of morality, it is from a conservative society, the notion and the conflict is not ethics, it will be moral, no? Is it how do you enter or you get outside of this morality? So, so in that sense, I encounter the problem of religion there. And of course, as the all European colonizers, they use Christianity to erase and conform a new subjectivity, no? The one that we know now. So the same thing the United States did in our lands through evangelical Pentecostal, no? So so this clash. I always said that, I mean, when I was thinking Cocote, I want Cocote to be this platform in which this clashes from the religion, which is, if we take the theological part of it, it is the relation that the person will have with the universe and the conception of creation of the universe and their universe. So yeah, so it started from there to this again, this foreign religion that clashes with a manifestation of Catholicism that from an academic we know that it's syncretism. Before you were from an Erolisa, it is just the way that poor people will practice Catholicism. I mean, it is from an academic perspective that we understand there is an African diaspora there, but not from this perspective from the popular. They will just define this as us, poor people, we practice Catholicism in this way, and the rich will go to the church. We don't go to church, right? So yes, yeah, something like that, sorry. Okay, you have your...
I kind of forgot the question though.
Yeah, I was going to say if you wanted me to repeat it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, why choose these unconventional storytelling modes for these films, and what designated the creative process?
Well, for me, it's not. I mean, I would say obviously it's complex, but I would say it in the most simple manner. There is little to none representation of women in Dominican cinema, and to me that was it. Like I just wanted to do that, and I embarked on that journey. And at first it was because Ramona was a work of fiction that explored, let's say, sorority, and it explored also religion in a way that how religion shapes their minds in like political and economic situations, such as like abortion, although that was not really the theme of Ramona, but and then obviously exploring all of this concept of what a telenovela is, because I was born watching them, Mexican telenovelas with my domestic worker, and like at that time I wasn't quite understanding what was going through their minds and my mind, and in the end I believe that telenovela shapes the way that some people view love, and in a way also like achievements, like I want to be rich, I want to be this, I want to get out of poverty, and in a way Ramona plays with that conception, and I believe that it still does in this like formal aspect, that it took a huge turn because in Dominican Republic you have to when you're telling stories that are not, let's say, are not in a way mainstream. I don't like saying that, but that defies the way rich people want us to make films. So we have to always look for crazy circumstances and you know, like someone told me, I have this amount of money, do you have a film? I'm like, well, that's half of the budget that someone told me that RAMONA would cost. So I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna comply. I don't want to be like, I'm just gonna wait for all the money to come so I can tell this story. And within that dilemma of making my first feature, which was let's say it was an auto-referential film, but it was also a film about, in a way, the dictatorship and how it erases people's consciousness to actually understand what it means to dwell or what it means to be different. So, and also, there was always this question of moral and ethical standards into like how did your family took this film, because my families are the center of the film, and I was like, you know what, and I'm sorry I'm gonna say this, I was like, you know what, fuck you. I mean, I don't need to explain it if the film doesn't explain it to you. Like, why do you always have to scrutinize the way a film has been made? And I mean, I understand, but in a way, like that sort of component was a big aspect of RAMONA as well, because the way that most people in our country portray ourselves is from a misery porn point of view, and to me it was like, I do not want that. I do not want to do that. I want to ask questions. I want to know what is another way of viewing the world, right? And not in a, you know, like not in an optimistic kind of Disneyland way, but there's always joy where there's anger and sadness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
So in both films, the protagonist enters a working class community to which they don't belong. Why did you pick these communities in particular, and how did you approach them?
Okay.
So basically, I think this is a conversation that always surpasses a lot of people when viewing RAMONA, but for me, more than dealing with teen pregnancy, it deals with the fact that we are middle class, sometimes high class people viewing others. So so that's, you know, that's our reality. Most filmmakers are that way. I'm not saying all of them, but it's a conversation that needs to be had in our country. And not only in our country, but in Latin America, it's always been a conversation since I don't know when, like probably the 60s or 70s. And in our way, I believe that nonfiction has always been scrutinized even more than fiction. And to me, I was like heavily, I had a lot of contradictions when writing the fictional screenplay, because you know, like I am not from that social class. I've never been pregnant. I don't know what that is. So I started going to those places to actually understand the way that they used to, you know, the way that they think, what they used to do, like random stuff. It wasn't even like something very, very concrete. And that became, you know, like that became front and center when talking about Camila, who's like my alter ego in the film, which is, you know, like this big question, like who am I to represent the other, and the marginalized, and within what lens are we gonna be doing that? So it was very important for us to have, you know, because this is something that happened yesterday that. Someone asked me why am I segmenting, you know, like why why do I say that I'm another person when I'm probably the same color as them? But I'm like, yeah, for them, I'm a white girl. You know, and you know, like it's
Una blanquita.
see, like you're not even from around here. You're not from the art. Like, what are you talking about? And they used to say that to us most of the time. And for Camila, it was always like very present. They would call her rubia. And to me, like, you know, those kind of like incongruences was like something that yesterday I was like, oh, yeah, so, you know, like that, it is so complex. It's not just I'm white and you're black or you know, like it's way more than that in other parts of, you know, other countries. And for us, it was very important to highlight that as to, like, you know, like having the van, the production van, having seen where she's coming from, what she wears, and all that stuff was like very important for us to highlight the fact that Camila was from another social group.
Okay. I'm going to change the question a little bit for Nelson. It's the same question, but I just want to highlight something different. Well, in art, there's always extraction involved. And in these films where you are taking these reality stories, both of you, stories, music, and practices from real people, how did you negotiate this cultural transaction?
Yes. No, I used to say. Like como un piano bar. No, well, I mean, I think like going, you know, like I always think that there's two dimensions of colors, and first is a construction in the sense of literally what it is, you know. But also they become political terms, and they also become a relation that you have with the world. But also, like, if we have a post-colonial, decolonial, we understand that there's things about Western and non-Western, no? And if we learn this beautiful and problematic saying of Edward Glissant, no, we are the colonizer and the colonized at the same time in those lands. So that becomes a problem there. I do not agree from an Anglo-Saxon perspective in which this exacerbation of the I and these political identities that creates, it creates a legal process in where there is group of people targeted that are that will have less privilege than others, no? From this perspective. And then there is this incapacity of not putting the people in relation, as we do not have the capacity to relate to the other. So for me, it's very important in my work, the problem of representation and the ethics of that negotiation. I believe that every time the subject that wants to be represented, that wants to represent through the problem of technology and the machine, to the subject that is being represented, which is could be a territory, could be a subject as a person, they are in capacity to sit down and negotiate the representation. So from that sense, even though I go to not only I invent territories, like there's no such thing as Oviedo and Cocote, no? There's no such thing as Santa Teresa in my film before. And even that it kind of exists, the territories in PEPE, those territories actually create another logic of the existence of a physical existence. So in that sense, I put all the effort, in this transaction, what you said, because that transaction is also, and you are a writer that I bet that you have to deal with the problem of translation of your word. No, the problem of translation, it also become a very complicated political issue. No, because the translation to whom we are translating, into what society we are translating, into what production of knowledge, of what paradigms of production of knowledge we are translating something. So in that sense, every time I go into these communities and I live there, because I mean I have other type of I actually go to the territories, I live in the territories, I create a relation, an emotional relation to the people. That's why sometimes I don't see myself as a director, because I make those sounds, I make those images, because it's my responsibility to produce those images, to produce those sounds, and the articulation of them, of course, in montage. So in that sense, I don't even there is a point in and it's beautiful, and I'm proud to say that there is a point in the process that we are not anymore in this massive distance that we start the project, and so we become closer, and it is important for me to do that.
Okay. And how did you, like, for example, in Cocote we see bits and pieces of different ceremonies, different
yes.
music, musical expressions
Yes.
of Afro-Dominican communities being turned into, like, this long ceremony of saying goodbye to Alberto's father, right? So how did you pick these parts, and why in particular, to build, like, and from which different ceremonies did you pick these parts for people who are not familiar with them?
So what is happening there is the la novena, no, the 9 days of so it is quite interesting, because it's interesting that you say that, but the truth is that every day will have it will have 5 mysteries, and they will repeat it every day. So, 4 mysteries, right? That they will repeat it. And we enter the death through the Holy Father, and through the Holy Father we enter the death, and then we do 4 moments, and we'll repeat this for 9 days. So what I did basically is, because in the end, of course, I was making a film with an affection, right? So what I did basically was that I divide those 4 moments of the ritual from we enter and to say goodbye, and I put it in like if they were different rituals or different forms of which in Peravia it was a tradition in the 60s and the 50s to actually go to every important place of the death, and they will do these novenas in different parts, right? So I took a little bit of that. And also, so what I do is like every mysterio will be for 2 hours. So how can I avoid the paraphernalia of cinema into this, right? Because for the first time I have money to make a film, so it was for me unethical to go. And I know these people since I was 8 years old. Enero Lisa, Ayuberbi, all La Familia Núñez, I know them since I'm 8. And I know that I can go there and I can film whatever I want. And no problem with that. But for me, for the first time I have money. So I have to, I couldn't go to a ritual for real and do that and just steal those images. So I have to organize the community through a legal process, because we do films with public money, So it's not. So we have to make every payment that we do. It has to be registered in a because it's public money. So I have to organize all this, and I said, oh my God, how am I going to do this if I am going to? I cannot have a crew in this process. Otherwise, this is gonna become an advertising thing where, so cut, come here. So what I decide is that I learned that, I told in my master class that Western always says that minus is more, menos es más, and for me more is more. So I just add things into the process of things. So something that we learn from something that doesn't have anything to do apparently to cinema is television. So what I did was I create this kind of a set television, and where everybody was out, and they divide the places in where the prayers are and then where the women's are. And it's a very complicated part where the women's are, because this is the room where the possession appears. So I didn't put my DP in that because they don't know them. So I was the only one in this room, and the other part. So we create kind of in this house, we create kind of we register this as kind of as a concert. We put microphone all over the place, and then I was in the middle of this room, and we open a little bit of a window, and where they will feed in me batteries, and in the sense when I was doing on film, they will giving me the magazines loaded with 60 millimeter. So in that sense, we never say cut for 2 hours. So we were able to, and of course, for my surprise, there was no. I mean, in the moment that those drums started to sound, there was nothing that we could do to stop the 500 centuries of culture. So they just came into my camera, into my images, through, of course, me putting out cinema and the paraphernalia out of there, and creating, of course, my connection to them for my own life. So this is how I divided this in 4 days. Sorry.
Okay. I'm impressed with the acting skills of the women in both films who were not professional actors. So I would like to know a little bit about casting and directing these women.
This is something funny that I don't think Nelson knows, but when I was doing the fictional casting for Ramona, Camila was the casting director for the film. And we wanted, we were looking for Ramona's mother, and it resounded immediately like I wanted to cast Yuberbi.
Oh yeah.
And she went, and we sent her like a scene, and she went into the room, and I didn't know, as like stupid me, I didn't know that she couldn't read that well.
No, she doesn't.
And she was like, okay, so this is what you're gonna do, and she would, like,
yeah,
we would hit rec and the room would light up.
Yeah.
And it was insane. I never told you this because obviously the film never happened that way. But within that casting process, in the actual Ramona, we spent a whole month going to different parts of Dominican Republic, because we didn't just want people from the capital or the outskirts. We wanted other representations, because I know that, we have different Dominican republics within the same Dominican Republic.
Of course.
And so I wanted to see as many as I could. So we saw like 80 girls. As not to say, it is very easy to find pregnant teenagers in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
It's just like you're coughing and then there's someone there, right? It's crazy. It's insane.
Yeah.
And something that that happens a lot in Dominican Republic that might not happen in a lot of other countries is that people want to talk.
Yes.
So there is not a problem in sitting down and be like, how are you, and just like spending the whole day talking. My experience was very different from Nelson. I was very afraid. I never talked to them
I was
ever.
afraid too.
Huh?
I was afraid.
I was shaking my hands, but I had a really good friend who was a director of photography. He's like the sweetest person I've ever met, and we came with my assistant director as well, who was also a very kind man, and so we started getting to know girls. But most of the girls in Ramona came from one particular place, which is called Gualey, which is now heavily colonized for tourists to come and see poverty, or cool poverty, let's say, because it has graffiti now. So most of the girls in Ramona came from Gualey, and I sat down. I think I took advantage of my baby face, and I think that it kind of like gave them security. So I started asking questions, and they were mostly rooted in, do you like soap operas? Yes, I like soap operas. If you were in a soap opera, were you the good or the bad girl? And you're like, the bad girl. Because the good girl only has like
Suffers too much.
Yeah.
Damn,
And
it's true.
and I was like, oh my. So I was just like laughing the whole time, and they would just sit down and explain like a Turkish telenovela that they were watching, and you would sit there for like 5 hours, and to me it was very important to know that I had an idea of what Ramona would be like in the fiction, and some of them kind of clicked, but most of them were the exact opposite of what I was imagining, and we wanted that diversity in a way that we have an evangelical who's 15 years old and pregnant with a guy who's 30 years old, and a policeman and a psychologist. Like, what the hell? And then like a 15-year-old girl with a 17-year-old boyfriend, and to me it was a question of like who do I resonate with, who resonates with me, and who's comfortable and who's in a way not comfortable, because I was also part of the conversation, and then something really beautiful happened because we shot the film chronologically in 3 weeks. So we started doing the interviews, and then we started spending time with them, and then we went into the studios, and this is something amazing because the studio is made by one of the biggest colonizers in our country, and to see those girls in the soundstage was like revolutionary in a way that next door could be Jennifer Lopez spending $25 million or even more.
Yeah.
And to me, like, they taking pictures in the garden and in like the makeup room was like, yes, you go, girl, like smash this shit up. And it was, and they've never been on camera, but that was never a problem for them. But as we went into the studio, those were the best 9 days of our shooting, because that was when we were just, at first we started doing improvisation role plays, like they would pretend to be reenacting a happy moment or a sad moment in their lives, so they started to getting used to the way that things work in the studio. And to me, the studio is a place where it's a place of artificiality, but it's a way to tell the truth, and to, like, expose the truth in its most purest and simplest form. It happened as the same as you read. So some of them could read, but most of them couldn't. And my idea was, I'm gonna give you some pointers, and then you're just gonna do whatever you want. So it's interesting to see, because they would take out tools from stuff that they watch. So you could see a lot of telenovela aspects in their acting. You would also see, it was very beautiful. Some of them would mumble words to others so that they can remember what they needed to say, and they thought that we couldn't hear them, but they had to. And they would improvise a lot. And I believe that from that moment, that scene where Camila and the actors are acting, and then they're sitting down giving them directions, I believe that gave them agency to just take the whole story and be like, I'm gonna do it my way, and I believe that's what happened.
Okay. I have some questions regarding decision making.
Yeah.
So one for Nelson is, during dialogue in Cocote, there is a tendency for the camera to avoid dramatic action, like avoid the actor's body. So why did you make that decision? I'm thinking of the scene of the plucking the chicken, and for example, the scene of the dialogue between en el destacamento, when they're talking about, the blowjob and all that.
Yeah.
So why did you make that decision?
Yeah, those decisions, and I think it's not only Cocote. I think it's in the way that I work the territories and the environment. Like for me, the universe, it's very important. It's another character, and how they interfere and they go out to these places. I think I try to avoid the simplification or the reduction of people through this psychology that we learn from Hollywood films, and and that in the end, if you analyze this historically, it's because it has to do with the whole star system, right? It is the star who actually become a commodity in capitalism, and it creates the biggest revenues if you have this actor or not, and that. So the whole star system, works in that, and I try to avoid that. And it depends, because in Cocote, for example, they are professional actors and there's non-professional actors. And then, for example, in my new film and films before, I don't work with professional actors at all, and that would be a completely different strategy and decision to do that. I protect my characters a lot, because as I said before, when I have a crew, I already been there for many months or many years with these people, and it's my responsibility to not make them vulnerable to that. So first, you have to, first, when I get to them, I understand that, I know that I'm working with vulnerable communities, and I understand the education system in our country, so I will know that perhaps most of these people will not know how to read. So that's why I never work with a director of casting. I do it myself, in the sense that, so I start with interviews, so I understand how they are related to these characters, and of course those characters will be that are coming from my imagination, perhaps, or not. They will be, of course, altered by them, and they will modify them. So in that sense, for example, in PEPE, which is the one that I have more, sorry that you haven't seen it, but it's the one that I have more, that I remember more, because I just did it. I was working with two characters that already, that they've been they have been in that situation before through violence and as many people, what is the problem of those lands? Of course, one of the main problems is men and women. No, if there is something that has been heard for centuries through patriarchal system, is heterosexual relations, in the sense of this fight. It is the first oppressed being in the history. We read from the history, for example, of that does Madame de Beauvoir, no, in what is the second genre. You see from the beginning this fight. So it was, for me, was very delicate, because he was ashamed to do that. Both they were ashamed to first me see myself as a victim, and the other one to be the one who, because he was already 70. So the violence, started to disease and the macho construction of it, right? So, I think so I try to make these people that are already vulnerable, that they don't know anything about what is cinema, what is theater, what is acting, right? My casting, for example, in the community starts explaining what is a casting and what is exactly what I do, because I come from, I don't want to censor myself, so I speak how I speak. I speak from this intellectuality, whatever. This is my life. I cannot deny where I'm coming from. So I want them to. So my first moments to them is explaining what I want, what I this, what I that, and not down my discourse. I don't want, because this is a arrogancy of the intellectual to think that people will not understand because I use this type of words. So my first process is to somehow to level my desires to their desires, right? So I protect them in the sense of what is the most important. We understand the subject that is being represented me, what is important is this idea that the character assume in the representation. How do we do that? So I will use my own tools as a filmmaker. They don't have those tools. So I always try that the camera, the sound, the people, the lights, and all of that will not interfere in the relation that they have with the character and with them in itself. So I try always to be. Yes, I mean, in Cocote perhaps is perhaps I was younger and I was a little bit, more shy or more scared to disrupt this thing that I saw in the rehearsal. I rehearse a lot. My castings process are super long, and I rehearse a lot and all of that. So I didn't want to break that. In PEPE, I felt a little bit more comfortable, and I get closer to them. And I find tools, because in that moment, perhaps I didn't have the tools to do it. But now I find tools to get closer and not interfere in them. But it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of understanding. It's a lot of sit down. It's a lot of understanding where this person is coming from. At least in the way that I work, when you are you work with professional actors, it's kind of easier because they're just tools, So the tools that they have and the tools that I have are kind of similar.
Okay, I have a question for Victoria about decision making also. There's a beautiful scene in which the pregnant young women from Gualey are acting or playing beauty salon in one of the sets. This is one of the most interesting scenes for me in the film, for the many layers it has. Yes. We have girls whose youth has been compromised by pregnancy acting as the women they're supposed to be. And they're quite good at improvising these roles, which is what they do every day. One of the strengths of Ramona is how it invites the subjects into the creative directing acting space. I was amazed by the openness you had in the project of giving them your place and giving them her place. So I just want to hear a little bit about that experience, and also how your work and your ethics have evolved after that experience.
Yes, I believe that I am very open to mistakes, and I believe that films are in itself trial and error. And I had two cameras. One was the camera of the director of photography, and one was the camera of a woman who was a camera B, who was also, she was also following a lot of Camila's journey in the film. And we had, and these were people who are my friends, so they're very close to me. So I give them freedom to explore the film with me, because that was also part of the film in itself. So basically, I am just a person that is always watching, always paying attention to whatever thing that would come up in the situation. So in my first film, I was up in center. I was the actor, I was the director, I was the producer, I was whatever, jack of all trades, whatever. So I decided this time that I would sit back and listen to them, and listen to everyone through their own craft. And in that moment, in the studio, there is, I think I keep forgetting, his name is Augusto Boal, and he uses the techniques of theater of the oppressed. And I believe that without even knowing that, perhaps that was something that I studied later, was something that I was doing in the film, which was letting them express their own opinions and actions. And for me it was both. I was very ashamed, and also I was very happy that was happening, because in the end they were criticizing my screenplay. And so I was so happy.
That's good.
I was so happy at the same time that I was so happy at the same time that I never made that film, because probably I would become just another person replaying that oppression through fictional characters who may never go through that, and to me it was so beautiful to have them say, like, dar una galleta, don't do this, don't do that, and it was all the freaking time it was like, don't do that, we don't say that, we don't do that. So because I was always thinking that Ramona was a very silent person, and that she was not into, let's say, like, she was not into men at all. And in the end, when they were talking about all of this, all of this violence, all of this, because, the macho mentality is, like, very ingrained in them. So I was always encountering all of these contradictions. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? But at the same time, it's their world. And with their whole complexity, and even though I don't fully agree with everything that they would be saying, I was like, I am happy that I am portraying them the way that they just wanted to be portrayed, because in that beauty parlor scene was the first time that I knew that most of them were not gonna be able to recreate the screenplay as it were. So I gave them a few directions, like, Ramona is gonna come in, she's gonna do her nails, she's gonna listen to you guys talk, and then she's gonna have a contraction, and you all are gonna lift her up and take her out of the frame. And they were like, okay, give us 30 minutes, and they would just go out of the set, and then to prepare, and then they would come in and be like, we're ready, and they would all, they would all place themselves in a chair, and they were like, okay, we're ready, and I'm like, okay, action, and they would just enter, and what you see is what happened in that specific day, and that scene in of itself has a lot of layers, because obviously they're always, even though men are hardly ever present in the film, there's always the presence of men, and they're always talking about pleasing them or not pleasing them, and of, you know, and the thing with Ramona is that, you know, as they're kids pretending to be mothers, and in the end we have an actress pretending to be herself and then pretending to be something else, and it just becomes a question of role play, and since they know how to act because they have their bellies, they have their lives, they've been robbed of their let's say youth, somehow or another, I believe that the film gave them a chance to play, and to me that was seeing them being kids again, in a way, like playing dolls, and to me that I believe that is why they felt so natural, and in some other scenes it would be some other type of sentiment, like that the phone call scene when they're on the booth, some of them pretended to be talking to their mothers, so you could hear a lot of other layers of emotions. One would be like, oh, so fuck you, blah, blah, and then someone would come, you know, crying in tears, and I believe that non-professional actors are professional actors in a way.
Okay, so we come from one of the weirdest countries in the world.
Yes.
And I just wanted to ask you, I mean, I'm married to a filmmaker, and she adapted one of my novels, Papi, Noelia, who's here with us today. And I just remember the process of filming and all the weird stuff that went on, you know, like I remember at one time they were stopped in this highway that they were supposed to film there, but someone didn't pay the guards, the army, you know, someone didn't bribe the army, someone from the production company didn't bribe the army at the right time, so they came with guns and stopped everything, and you know they had to stay there for hours in the sun, scorching sun, waiting with these guys with long guns and stuff like that. So I just wanted to ask you if you wanted to, you know, entertain us with something that happened while filming in the DR. Okay.
Yeah.
You
No,
have your
I
own
mean,
piano man.
actually, yes. Well, this is some. No, well, maybe I can tell the story of the last shot of Cocote, no?
In la piscina.
No, like when Alberto is running, right? Like, well, if you see this from a very Hollywood perspective, imagine I rented I closed everything, no, but no, it was like that. Actually, I'm just gonna give you the end, but I'll explain you what it's like. If you put the real sound of this scene, it's actually when the truck happens. Hey, ya tú sabes, mi hermano. So sorry for those who not speak English. It's like well, I don't know, you know, like. So he was just saying goodbye. Let's say that. But yeah, I mean, like, I have a reputation of being a very reckless person when I'm filming. I come from make films by myself, so I had actually a real crew people that actually work in the industry, and most of them work in Netflix and all of that. So for them, it's like to work with me, it's insane. So I was like, no. We cannot do that. If we close the street because we come from a very crazy country, we're going to have to pay to the guards. They're going to come here. They're going to have the police. And we don't have money. We don't have any money. So we just have to do that. Let's go at 3 a.m. to this thing. So we just start stopping. And we were in a very isolated freeway. And well, apparently there's a lot of people in the freeway at that 3. So we have like 10 cars just waiting. And then when I saw this truck coming with all these slides. I say, I just stopped like that. It was just the Vicente, the actor, the assistant director that wanted to die with me, the DP that it was from Austria that was like completely scared about me and all what was happening in this country, and I just run into the street and I say, wait, listen to me. And I still look kind of, but I'm not. And I did this. Listen, I'm a student. We don't have no money. This is my thesis. This is my thesis. Please, can you come back and wait for us? So of course, we last so much to prepare this, but the guy was there, you know, we put in some beer. So the guy started to stop and like was telling the other cars like, wait, we're helping them. They have to shoot this, otherwise they're not gonna finish their film. So everybody to get out of the car. So at 3 a.m. we have like 10 cars in the freeway that goes from the south freeway until we did it. And of course, so that's when we finished. We did this in in one shot only.
Risking Vicente's life.
Risking Vicente's life for Vicente. Vicente was dying. So we just did it. It was one shot only. No way we couldn't repeat that again. So yeah, so in the end, ya tú sabes, mi hermano, cuídate.
Are we okay? Do we have time for one more question? Yeah? Okay. Okay, so just one last question. So the beginning and the end of Cocote in the pool area of the mansion.
Yeah.
The end is my favorite part of the movie, the end, because we see this like monigotes, you know, I have it ingrained in my brain, the voice of the owner of the mansion saying, Marcelo, Marcelo, tan bueno mi esposo. It's like I hear my aunt's voices from my mother's side. It's horrible. So this is one of my favorite parts because it's the only time the film allows us a little humor.
Yeah.
At the end. And it's also a humor that is cruel because it portrays the high contrast of the place that we come from, of Dominican society. So how do you guys feel working at the crossroads of this race and class contrast, which is the Dominican society?
Well, I mean, there's no other way. I mean, Dominican Republic. I mean, the race conversation that we have, it is hidden in the class, right? And Junot Diaz would say you can find the whitest black man ever that you can ever imagine. You will find it in Dominican Republic, and this goes back to this idea that I had in the beginning that a blackness or whiteness, it is a relation that we have with the world, and it is political term. I mean, just to be very quick on that, I like these two scenes that as well because it is. I took something, and for them that are students here, when we are studying cinema, we can hear or script. A writer professor saying that we will should never break the point of view, right? So basically for me, we start the film in this garden and there's no point of view. What is this film about? In this first 10 minutes of this long shots. And for me, this point of view was a very it was a very organic transposition because it's not a metaphor, it's a transposition that this place with lack of point of view, it is also the lack of representative of Alberto's life, no? Alberto's life, go to his town, kill someone there, but in this reality, in this garden where it constitutes the power, the crime is not even a crime because his life is not even alive, right? So in this place, and where and when Alberto loses his point of view, loses the right to exist in a society that that is class-based, like even like India, no? It's kind of like caste, no? So yes, of course, it is my fight, and it will be my fight until I die. This is, if we want to have a decent society in the Dominican Republic, we have to talk about class, because it is the center of the discrimination and the unprivilege of the construction of our society. Yeah.
I like hearing you talk, because I'm like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Because for me, I think it's more, I believe that everything that I do is like, sort of like as if a mosquito is biting me. It's like, I come from a middle class family with a lot of problems, just like I believe almost everyone. Nelson was talking about the fact that he came from a leftist family. Like my grandfather fought through his pen during the dictatorship, but then everyone else was silenced. And I believe that I came to shake that off within my whole family. And I believe that I do that through my films, within my own perspective of what I believe should be discussed. Whether if it's, queer silence, whether if it's about women in the Caribbean. But I believe that for me, it might be something that is already ingrained and I'm not even thinking about it, because obviously, even though I am very privileged and I have had the right to go outside into the world and study and all of that, I believe that as a woman, as a queer woman, I encounter a lot of other battlegrounds in the Dominican Republic, and I believe that is what happens in my work. And I believe, just as Nelson, will continue to happen until the day I die as well. And yes, in the Dominican Republic, something very weird is happening, is that we are, few people are let's say, like, discovering and understanding what it's like to be Dominican, and it's very difficult to answer. We don't have an answer what it's like to be Dominican, but it is definitely not it is definitely not in the representation and mimicry of otherness and other stuff that we basically see in other parts of the world. I believe that even though we haven't really understood what it's like to frame something in a Dominican way, I believe that we will continue to be finding that in the moment. Right?
I want to say a huge thank you to our two directors here, Nelson, Victoria, and to Rita for coming and asking these wonderful questions. I also want to thank Alfonso, my partner here. Without him, we never would have been able to make this happen. I want to thank Jason and Alice Elliott for giving support in the dock area to bring students and classes and make this more interactive. I'd also like to thank the production lab for allowing us to be here after hours a little bit. This was a huge request, and we're so grateful to them. To Dominican Studies Institute for their support in this effort and their amazing collaboration with us. That's Dr. Ramona Hernandez, Pierre Lawson, Sarah Aponte.
All at City College of New York. Yeah,
yes, Jerry Carlson. Thanks to them.
Yeah, and thank you to you and to everybody else. You're a superstar with this whole thing. Without Siobhan, it would not be possible, truly.
So we made this happen. And to FLAC, Center for Latin American and Caribbean Studies. They have also been really huge in this. Check out what they're doing. They're hosting a lot of other wonderful events. I want to thank Dylan, Johanna, Naya, and their team there. So there's a lot of people that brought this to life. So thanks to all of them. And we look forward to seeing you at future events like this. We plan on continuing these kind of talks and series. So hope to see you all again in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sí, gracias, amor. Gracias, Juan. Muchas gracias.
You know, that was one of the books that made me.
Was it Black Boy or The Outsider? Pero el álbum, digamos, The Outsider, que fue la última.
Sí, pero Black Boy fue uno de los libros, yo lo leí por accidente, llegó a casa de mi abuela en inglés, yo estaba hablando inglés y pues también me hizo aprender inglés.